Hello, I'm Vern. Welcome back to Story Molder for another wonderful story to enlighten your day. Today's story is entitled A Very Cold Winter. One morning, Old Man Rabbit woke up and realized that it was crunch time to snatch up and stock up on as much food as he could for the winter months when food becomes scarce. So early one cold and frosty morning, Old Man Rabbit was all wrapped up with rounds and rounds and rounds, with yards and yards and yards of his favorite red knit scarf. He was warm, so he didn't care if the wind whistled through his whiskers, and he didn't care if the wind blew his ears straight up in the air. He was so nice and warm. He was going to find food at Farmer Dryer's fields. It was going to be a cold winter, a very cold winter, and he wanted to be prepared. He started off that morning lippity-clippity-cloppity-coppity down the little brown path that stretched right in front of his house. That path led directly to Farmer Dryer's fields. Old Man Rabbit scuffled through the shiny red, yellow, and brown leaves as he carried a great big bag over his back. When he got to the fields, he immediately found 3 fat yellow ears of corn that Farmer Dryer had missed. So he grabbed them and dropped them into his bag. A little further along the way, he found some purple turnips, some orange carrots with nice green tops, and quite a few big red apples that Farmer Dryer had arranged in little piles. Old Man Rabbit went into the barn, squeezing under the big door by making himself very flat. He then pushed the door open and pulled his bag into the barn. He filled all the empty spaces in his bag with potatoes. He thought to himself, I should stir up an apple cobbler for myself a little later on. He grabbed his bag and headed back out the barn, closing the door behind him. Then Old Man Rabbit headed back home down the little brown path with his mouth watering every time his bag bumped against his back. I'm a very lucky old rabbit, he thought. I have food, and I am not running to anyone on my way back. It was still so very, very early, and most animals had not gotten up yet. When he got back to his little house, he emptied his bag in the middle of his front room. He put the corn in one pile, the carrots in one pile, the turnips in another pile, and the apples and potatoes in the last pile. He decided to go ahead and cut up some apples and stir in some flour to make a cobbler. He then filled the pan with apples and some red berries on top. He put his cobbler in the stove and went outside to sit a while and eat a turnip. He had a smirk on his face as he thought all the while what a fine old rabbit he was, and so clever too. Well, while he was just sitting there in front of his little house, wrapped up in his red scarf and munching the turnip, he heard a little noise in the leaves. It was Billy Chipmunk hurrying home to the stone wall where he lived. He blew on his paws to keep them warm. Good morning, Billy Chipmunk, said Old Man Rabbit. Why are you running so fast? Because I'm cold and I'm hungry, answered Billy Chipmunk. It's going to be a hard winter, a very hard winter. No apples left. I've been looking all morning for an apple, but I couldn't find not a one. And with that, Billy Chipmunk went chattering on by, his fur standing straight out in the wind. No sooner had he passed than Molly Mouse came creeping along the little brown path. Her long gray tail rustled the red, yellow, and brown leaves. Good morning, Molly Mouse, said Old Man Rabbit. Good morning, answered Molly Mouse in a wee little voice. You look a little unhappy, said Old Man Rabbit, taking another bite of his turnip. I've been looking for an ear of corn, said Molly Mouse in a sad little chirping voice. But the corn has all been harvested. It's going to be a very, very hard winter. A very hard winter. And Molly Mouse trotted by and out of sight. Pretty soon, Old Man Rabbit heard somebody else coming along by his house. This time it was Tommy Chickadee hopping by and making a big to-do, chattering and scolding as he came. "Good morning, Tommy Chickadee," said Old Man Rabbit. But Tommy Chickadee was put out about something to remember his manners. He just chirped and complained because he was cold and he couldn't find a single crumb of a berry or anything at all to eat. With his feathers puffed out, trapping air in to keep him warm, it made him look like a little round ball. He fluttered away. He was tweeting more and more as he went. Old Man Rabbit finished his turnip, eating every single bit of it, including the green leaves. Then he went inside his house to poke the fire in his stove and to see how the cobbler was coming along. It was doing very well indeed, smelling good as the apples bubbled and boiled and smelling mighty yummy. Old Man Rabbit looked around at the corn, the carrots, the turnips, the apples, and the potatoes. Suddenly he got an idea. It was a funny idea indeed. It was different from any other idea he had ever had before in all of his life. It made him scratch his head and think and wonder. But that funny thought pleased him too. First, he took off his scarf. Then he put on his apron. He took his best red tablecloth from the drawer and spread it out on his table. Then he set the table with his china with the gold band around it. By the time he had done all that, the cobbler was ready. He took it out of the stove, smelling all sweet and steamy, and then he set it in the middle of the table. Heaps and heaps of corns and carrots and turnips, apples and potatoes were arranged around the cobbler. Then he took down his dinner bell that he had not used in years. It was all rusty. He stood in the front door and he rang that bell. He rang it very hard and yelled with a loud voice, "Dinner is ready. Come to dinner, Billy Chipmunk. Dinner is ready. Come to dinner, Molly Mouse. Dinner is ready. Come to dinner, Tommy Chickadee." They all heard, and they all came. They brought their friends, too. Billy Chipmunk brought Chatter Cheek, a lame squirrel who he had invited to share his hole for a few months. Molly Mouse brought a young gentleman friend, Field Mouse, who was very distinguished looking because he had long whiskers. Tommy Chickadee brought Rusty Robin, who had a broken wing and had not been able to fly south for the winter. When they all tumbled into Old Man Rabbit's house and saw the table with the cobbler in the center, they lost their manners. All of them began eating as fast as they could, as if the food was going to get up and run away. They kept Old Man Rabbit very busy waiting on them. He gave all the berries from the cobbler to Tommy Chickadee and Rusty Robin. He selected juicy corn for Molly Mouse and her friend, and the largest apples for Billy Chipmunk and Chatter Cheek. Old Man Rabbit was so busy that he didn't get to eat, but he didn't care about that, not one little bit. It made him feel so warm and full inside just to see others eating. When the dinner was all over and everyone was full, not a single crumb was left on the table. Surprisingly, Tommy Chickadee hopped up on the back of his chair and chirped, "3 cheers for Old Man Rabbit's Thanksgiving dinner."
Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray!
They all twittered, chirped, and chattered, and Old Man Rabbit was quite surprised. He didn't get over it for weeks. You see, Old Man Rabbit had given a Thanksgiving dinner without even knowing that it was actually Thanksgiving Day. Old Man Rabbit had the right ingredients: plenty of food, sympathy toward his friend's situation, and a grateful heart. Thanksgiving is a seed for joy. Caring and sharing with others on Thanksgiving Day or any day can give you great joy. Reflect on your blessings, and in all things, Have an attitude of gratitude. Thank you for dropping by and listening to my story. Come back as often as you like. I'll be happy to have you. Goodbye for now.